Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine. And Joseph, I want to start by talking a little bit about what we're hearing regarding Russia and the conflict in Israel. Moscow has traditionally good relations with Israel and increasingly close ties to Iran, which provides the Hamas militant group with financial and material support. And there are reports that Russia is likely to try to use the eruption of violence in Israel to distract from its operations there in Ukraine. We're actually still connecting with Joseph, so he does not hear us just yet. And I forgot where he was. Where was he yesterday, Haley? Was he in Kharkiv yesterday?
I believe he was in Lviv yesterday.
In Lviv, yeah. He moves around quite a bit, which is unbelievable. He takes the train, and if you listen to his reports daily, you know he's out and about in cafes and jogging, which is hard to believe. But then again, as we heard from a former Chicagoan living in Tel Aviv yesterday, they're somehow going about their normal business, even in Israel. We hear you now, yes, Joseph. Haley. Can you hear us, Joe?
Yes. Am I clear to you?
You are. I was just talking about what may be coming from the Kremlin as far as the conflict in Israel. What are you hearing there?
Well, that is certainly on everyone's mind. We see this. There's so many different levels and permutations to it. Everyone I speak with here is pretty convinced that obviously the Kremlin has had a hand in this. We also, when I speak with Israelis, the ones who are currently in a very difficult situation, they have great solidarity with the Ukrainian people. And they know what they are going through now is sort of the beginning of what Ukrainians have been going through for so long. And in fact, today it seems to be a relatively calm day in Israel. There still are rocket attacks here and there, but people are in the sense of preparing for what might happen next, just as Ukrainians were in those early days or the late days of February in 2022. But when we look at the situation in America, and when I speak with Americans, it's very different. For example, I check in with Israelis, and they also say, "Hey, how is everything in Ukraine?" When I talk to Americans, and especially American Republicans, I know either they're not interested in Ukraine. Many of them have not been for a long time, or they get, in the cases of a few people, they get angry if I mention Ukraine. And I was speaking to one Republican in America, a former pretty, top official in the Pentagon. And this person, understandably was upset about what happened in Israel on Saturday. And I said, yeah, everyone here was upset as well. And I said, it was doubly upsetting because we had that terrible situation in Kharkiv the day before. And that was met with great anger. And so this is very strange. We see, I think there's some in Washington who only want to look at, for some reason, they want to ignore Ukraine. Maybe it's more difficult because Russia is a much more bigger and difficult threat than Hamas. But at the expense of that, we might fail to see what's really happening. And, if you look at, Russia for several years has refused to identify Hezbollah and Hamas, Hezbollah in Lebanon to the north of Israel, and Hamas as terror groups. They've been sort of shifty on it. Russia has refused to condemn outright what Hamas did to Israel on Saturday, these heinous attacks, which, by the way, exactly what Hamas did, the barbaric way they treated Israelis. Israelis at music festivals, people in their houses, in their kibbutzes, is exactly what Russians have done to Ukrainians. Look at what happened in Mariupol, and anywhere where Russians have occupied, such as the city of Kherson. Ukrainians have lived through that type of hell. I've heard so many stories, which I've shared with you all over the past 20 or so months, of the atrocities of the Russians, and it's the same thing we see from Hamas. And so we don't see Russia condemning it. And so here it's very strong sense that Russia certainly is behind this, along with Iran. Russia has partnered with Iran with the drones, which, by the way, last night the Russians sent 60. What was it? They sent 36 of the Iranian kamikaze suicide drones to Odessa, Mykolaiv, and Kherson. 27 of those were shot down. Some of them did hit their targets. The Russians are trying to, as always, to hit Ukrainian ports. But Ukrainians, because of the air defense and because of the attacks on Russian naval bases, there actually are ships reportedly preparing to leave from Ukrainian ports through the Black Sea. So we do see some success there. But the point is that it's Iranian drones that have caused so much hell and tear. And so when you look at some of the commentary in Washington, at best, it seems a refusal to look at how these things might be connected. For example, Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri tweeted earlier today or yesterday. He said, Israel is facing an existential threat. Any funding for Ukraine should be directed to Israel immediately. And the feeling here is that that's exactly what Russia, if Russia is indeed behind this in any way, is hoping to achieve, to divert attention and resources away from Ukraine.
Joseph, where are you today, and are you expecting Russia to take advantage of how we're now focused on Israel by mounting more attacks there where you are?
Well, I'm in Lviv today, and today, October 10th, is the 1-year anniversary of Russia of the massive infrastructure attacks that Russia began launching on Ukraine throughout all of last winter. And so I recall today, as I speak with you, we had some Zoom difficulty connecting, but last year on this day, I did not want to miss the streak of speaking with WGN every single day. But when Russia hit, they sent over 100 missiles on this day 1 year ago throughout Ukraine, and we had no power, we had no internet. That was one of the scariest days because we had no way to know what was happening. You couldn't, if you wanted to communicate with someone, you had to knock on their door. People sat in cafes in the dark, drinking cold coffee in pretty much silence for hours, waiting to see what was going to happen. It was one of the scariest days. I remember I had to scramble. I found a generator from some monks. I found fuel or gasoline from some friends. I borrowed a Starlink from some journalists, and somehow I was able to connect to you and to still give a report. But that began, that winter, that frozen winter, where often there was no hot water, sometimes no water, and no electricity. Ukrainians were able to maintain internet, but it was an extremely difficult winter. And, I think now everyone has adapted and is sort of ready for that. But there is a sense, of course, that something like that could happen. And by the way, that attack, the Russian attack on Kharkiv, the day before the Hamas attack on Israel, the missile that hit one of the missiles that hit the center of Kharkiv almost hit the Kharkiv synagogue. And the windows of all the windows in the flat of the chief rabbi of Kharkiv were destroyed, as were the windows of the synagogue. And so, I think if we look a little bit more closely, we see, who are the free people and who are the people with this sort of Nazi maniacal mentality in these battles, whether it's here in Israel or here in Ukraine, or whether they're in Israel or here in Ukraine.
Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine. I always appreciate your perspective on all of this, Joseph, and glad we could connect today. We will talk tomorrow.
Thank you, Bob. Until tomorrow.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?